Hey everybody, Larry McReynolds here, and I am very excited about this new digital program. It's called McReynolds Rundown. Each week we'll look back at the race we just came off of and look ahead to where we're headed for the next weekend. So this week we're going to look back at the race at COTA in Austin, Texas. So the first topic, did NASCAR make the right call in ending the race early on Sunday? You know, there's no question they made the right call, and I've never envied NASCAR's position. They absolutely are like walking on the sharpest razor blade that you could ever imagine, because first and foremost, they're trying to make sure that we put on a good competitive show for the fans at the track and the fans watching the broadcast. They're also trying to cater to a lot of other people, to the teams, to the drivers, to the broadcast partners, to the racetrack. And then most importantly, something they never take their eye off of is the safety of our drivers. And when you look at the one incident that we had with Kevin Harvick, with Christopher Bell, with Bubba Wallace, right after that, then we had that big wreck with Cole Custer as well as Martin Truex Jr. And that was kind of a wake-up call that maybe we couldn't race with that much water on the racetrack. They made a great call right there by red flagging the race, putting the Air Titans out there to get the water off, let the crews service the windshield and take care of the drivers, and we went back racing and we started doing single file restarts. And we actually got back to some pretty good racing, but every time we seemed to bunch them up, that's when we would get in trouble. And I think when that rain moved in and the radar showed absolutely it was not going to subside, as much as they hated to cut the first trip to COTA 14 laps short, there's no question they had to call that race because darkness was coming as well. So I stand behind what they did. I think they did the best job that they possibly could. So the next topic, what were my thoughts on COTA as a NASCAR track on an inaugural weekend? You know, if I go back a number of years ago, I felt like our two road courses a year, one at Sonoma, one at Watkins Glen, that's about all that we needed. But it just seemed like the racing was getting better and better at the road courses. I go back a lot of my years as a crew chief, when we'd go to a road course, you could count on one hand what driver was probably going to win the race and have a couple of fingers left over. The competition at road courses today, they're just as tough as it is anywhere else that we go. So when the 2021 schedule came out and we had 7 road course races, I think everybody was pretty pumped up and pretty excited about that. And I've got to say the one that had the most energy, it seemed like, was COTA. I mean, it is a first-class facility. The Formula One cars go there every single year in the fall. I do certainly hate that the whole weekend was dampened by weather, but basically seeing that place and the racing that we did have when we did have the right conditions, I only hope that when the 2022 schedule comes out, that we do have COTA on that schedule. So we're coming up on Memorial Day weekend, which means it's time for the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. So the next topic or debate, the Coke 600, it's the longest NASCAR race. Is it time to shorten some of NASCAR's longest races? You know, I do have a strong opinion about that. I think with where we're at with society today, that there are some 500-mile races, maybe even some 500-lap races that we do need to shorten. I think if we can get our races somewhere around 3 to 3.5 hours of airtime, I think that's perfect for what today's society is looking for, to sit down and watch a broadcast of a sporting event. But I will say this, and I say this with a lot of confidence, there's a few races we need to leave alone. Let them race as they are. That's the Daytona 500, the Southern 500 at Darlington, and the Coke 600 at Charlotte. I know sometimes you have to kind of look across tradition, but it's tradition to run those races in that length. I hope we're not even thinking about shortening up the Coke 600. Yeah, I know it's over 4 hours of racing. We're going to start in the daylight. We're going to go into night. 400 laps, 600 miles. I do know, looking back at 1991, when I was a part of being able to win that race with Davey Allison and Robert Yates Racing, you knew as a race team, you did a full day's work and a full night's work. So hopefully that's not something that they're looking at in the future. So one other thing we'll do each week here on the McReynolds Rundown, we're going to take a fan question. So this week's question comes from C.J. Hersom from Connecticut. Should NASCAR continue to race in the rain after the issues with visibility this past weekend at COTA? So I've kind of changed my mind on racing in the rain. And I think there's two distinct differences. There's racing in wet and there's racing in the rain. If you look at the tires that Goodyear has come out with, they are called wet weather tires. They're not called rain tires. I think what we have finally found out, and I know NASCAR is looking at it, they're not just going to turn their back on what happened at COTA this past weekend. They will look what we can do moving forward, because we do have the wet weather tires for all the road courses, and even looking at it possibly for tracks like Richmond, like Loudon, some of our shorter tracks. So where we're at today is, I think we have to think about racing maybe only in wet conditions at the road courses. Or if it's a mist or if it's a light sprinkle, I think we are fine. But when we get that downpour, that hard rain, the tires are good. And these drivers do a really nice job, but I just think the visibility with the rooster tails and the spray off the cars, it's just too much. We cannot have drivers out on a racetrack running well over 100, over 150 miles an hour and not being able to see 5 or 10 foot out in front of the hood. So hopefully, I know NASCAR is thinking about some things. They're looking at things maybe as we move forward. But right now, if I had to make a call, we race on road courses in wet conditions, a sprinkle, a light rain, but not when there's a heavy downpour. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this first edition of McReynolds Rundown, but keep the fan questions coming. To send me a question, tag at NASCAR on Fox, use the hashtag McReynolds Rundown. I enjoyed it, and you know what? We'll see you next week.
For more great NASCAR on Fox content, subscribe to our channel. It's somewhere right around here.